Ben Fritz, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming. I'm so excited to have you here. How are you?
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I want to thank you more than just for coming now, but I reached out to you a couple of years ago after I read your book, The Big
Hmm.
Picture. And before, at the time, wanted to start a different podcast called All Things Entertainment, just about the entertainment world.
Hmm.
And one of my fears eventually was that it would take me too long to succeed before getting burnt out of the topic of entertainment and
Okay.
exclusively talking entertainment guests. And so I figured I had to widen my scope a little bit. But 2, 3 years later, I really appreciate you coming back. So thank you very much again. It means a lot.
Sure. Yeah, it's my pleasure.
So there's a lot going on in the entertainment world, and I know that I've been following your reporting, and it's been a ton of fun, and I really appreciate it.
Thanks.
And and I also know that you've been back and forth in the AI world a little bit, and obviously AI and Hollywood are going to be blending. So I'd like to try to touch on a little bit of both of those topics throughout the conversation, if possible.
Okay.
But the state of movies in general actually feels like it's been kind of getting better, right? Like,
Yeah.
Project Hail Mary is doing well. A lot of studios are making originals, it looks like, or are willing to take a little bit more creative chances.
Hmm.
What have you observed, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, I think the if you care about creativity in movies, it's definitely a good trend. I mean, the a lot of the in the 2010s, the mega franchises were just dominating the business, and it seemed like
Sure.
they couldn't lose. Seemed like they couldn't lose, right? Like a good Marvel movie, a bad Marvel movie, a good Fast and Furious movie, a bad Fast and Furious movie. Like they were all making $1 billion, right? So understandably, the studios were pumping them out and not making much of anything else. Who could blame them? But a lot of those franchises have lost steam, and they're not making as much money as they used to, and so they're actually um, partly maybe that was studio missteps, partly that was a lot of momentum lost during the pandemic, partly I think young people now are a little more cynical about those franchises, which if you like to see original stuff in the movies is a good sign.
Yeah.
And yeah, so people are responding some better to wholly original, let's say, things that have not been film franchises before, be it Project Hail Mary, be it The Housemaid,
Hmm.
Hoppers has done reasonably well for Pixar.
Sure.
Um, I think those are all good
Sinners
signs.
was big.
Sinners, Jesus Christ, of course. Sinners was huge last year. I mean, they proved a lot of doubters wrong with that film, obviously,
Yeah.
and I think that's a good sign for people being open to new stuff and positive things in Hollywood. That said, like this year the box office is up, but we cannot forget that attendance is down like a third from before the pandemic. So the long term trend, it's still a tough time for the movie business.
Yeah, totally, totally. And I mean, I guess that since the pandemic, I think that, like you said, there were a bunch of factors that kind of led to the big franchises kind of being slowed down a little bit. And we'll kind of get into a little bit more of those details. But I mean, it could have also, I mean, post-pandemic, I think that the studio has probably tried for 3 or 4 years, maybe even more, to continue this whole franchise model.
Hmm.
And so, I mean, I guess you can, even though it's not necessarily as good as, say, pre-pandemic levels as far as attendance is concerned, I think we have more of a reason now to go to movies than we've had in the couple of years since the pandemic even, kind of came to an end. Whether you want to call it 2022, two, three, whatever you want to call it. Um, but I mean, only the last year and a half, I feel like, or 2 years, really since I think the Oppenheimer Barbie kind of
Yeah.
spectacle did things really pick up, and even then it probably took another 6 months to a year for more originals to get rolled out rather.
Yeah, I think that the business is getting back to the levels of releases, at least, that it was at. We're getting more big releases. I mean, there's a lot of interesting movies coming out this year. And there was the pandemic and then there were the strikes. So those
Hmm.
really both damaged production in a big way. It was hard for Hollywood to get back on its footing, just as far as how many movies they were going to make. So yeah, as a film fan, I think we're at least as far as the releases we're getting, we're as close to the levels pre-pandemic as we've been this decade. It's the best it's been this decade. That's what I would say.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's great. I think it's exciting. I wanted to
Hmm.
actually, because until I started following Matt Bellamy's podcast, The Town,
Yeah.
I didn't know how big of a market horror was, and I didn't know, I wouldn't associate it with being so big in theaters and being so popular in theaters. And your previous book, The Big Picture, had talked about franchise movies as making a ton of money. And
Mm-hmm.
your main argument, I think, if I recall correctly, was that globally, like you had to have something that could convert globally, that
Mm-hmm.
across different cultures, that people could still relate to by the millions, and
Mm-hmm.
and there's certain genres that lend themselves to that, like superhero movies or Mission Impossible or
Yeah,
Transformers.
big spectacle action. Yeah.
Right, exactly. But horror's kind of always been in the background, but always been even through COVID and everything. Like it feels like that genre has always been a movie genre. Can you maybe elaborate on the business end or the entertainment end, why that would be?
Yeah, horror's been one of the few genres that have survived sort of the rise of prestige TV and streaming. There's a lot of genres that like movies used to do that TV didn't do well, and an obvious one is like prestige drama. Like back when there were just four networks, people who wanted to see like high quality drama, you had to go to the movies because you weren't going to get anything. Sort of let's say like a Meryl Streep kind of movie, you weren't going to get anything remotely that quality on CBS, ABC, NBC, Fox, right? But then as like HBO started doing original programming and FX, and then Netflix got into it, and Amazon Prime, there's a lot of good stuff to watch at home. And the same thing happened with comedy to a large extent,
Hmm.
also because of so much great comedy on YouTube, frankly. And people didn't have to go to the movies for it. And those genres have really struggled to stay relevant at the box office. And you see very few adult dramas, comedies doing well anymore. Horror is something that people really like to go out and see together, and it makes sense because people like to be scared together, and being in a dark room lends itself really well to that genre, right? And horror just doesn't work that well at home to watch alone. Certainly doesn't work well to watch on your phone with half attention the way
Yeah,
some entertainment does. So
yeah,
horror has really, really been steadfast. And the other thing Hollywood loves about horror is you can make a good horror movie cheap.
right.
You can spend a few $1,000,000 and have a horror movie that can be really, really successful. And that's not true of many other genres.
Yeah, definitely. I remember hearing, projected or reading articles on opening weekends for horror movies and thinking, made 25 million or something like that, and everyone's raving about it. I'm like, what's the big deal? And then I found out the
Right?
budget was $2.5 million or something
Yeah,
like that, and I'm like,
exactly.
oh man,
Exactly.
that's awesome. But
Mm-hmm.
but case in point, and I think this movie ended up on Netflix somewhere in obscurity, relative obscurity. But there was a movie I think missing, and it was this thriller movie about a girl whose mom dates a sketchy guy, and then she basically uses her social media presence to help find her mom in South America or something crazy, or
Okay.
across the border or something like that. And I mean, just from a speculative place, or just sorry, rather anecdotal place, it was an incredible experience in the theater. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah?
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm not a thriller or a horror kind of person, but I
Mm-hmm.
think that like you were mentioning at least, so much of that is psychological. So much of that is dependent
Yeah.
on the environment, is dependent on whether or not you're zoned into the music that is slowly like making your heart rate slow down
Mm-hmm.
a little bit right before a big jump. And so it almost is its own a little world in and of itself within the movie world that like just exists on its own in theaters.
Yeah, and horror has really recently expanded, frankly, beyond the sort of just cheap thrills of it or the gore. I mean, look at Weapons. A lot of people would say that was one of just the highest quality films last year. It's certainly one of the most original movies. I think you sort
Hmm.
of can't argue against that. And um, or there's really like if you saw the Nosferatu film a couple of years ago, which I loved. That was released by Focus Features. I mean, that was like kind of half European art house movie and half like really really scary monster movie. So you people are finding ways to like do horror in all these different in many different from many different angles than we've ever seen before. There's a lot of creativity happening in the horror genre right now.
Yeah, it's fun. I'm a big fan of it. I think it's great. I read your article I think today or yesterday about Regal's $50 ticket and coming out to Dune 3, and there's a couple of places I want to go with Dune, especially comparing or especially just talking about or observing the fact that they're taking all the IMAX screens, which is a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
Um, Especially compared to their competition, who we'll talk about in a minute. But movie how do you think they came up with this game plan? How do you think they justify a $50 ticket if the problem is getting people's butts in seats and and attendance is still, let's say, a third down from, or whatever you said it was, down from
Yeah.
pre-pandemic levels, then I mean, you're obviously, de-incentivizing the audience, and that's aside from whatever advertising or new advertising that's been happening in theaters recently. And I only just recently saw that with Saving Private Ryan, but I was blown away by how many ads there were.
Oh yeah, right. So there's a ton of things there. Like there's sort of like, because more fewer people are going to theaters, and this year box office is up a bit, but overall it's definitely not at the levels it was at in the 2010s. Theaters are like, well, we need to make more money. How can we make more money? Okay, one way is more pre-show ads, which you can say degrades the experience, but the theaters would say, well, we've done the research, and when we put in more ads, it's not like fewer people come.
Right.
That's what they would say. And this $50 ticket is part of this broader trend I'm writing about, where the theaters are saying, look, we need to make more money. Well, one way to make money is to sort of take the approach that like airlines do, which is that if you're willing to sit in like a middle seat in the back, then you can pay a lot less than the person who wants like first class treatment, right? Even though you won't get to the same place. So some people who love movies and have discretionary income, they need to be in the IMAX theater watching a 70 millimeter film on opening night. That's very important to them. Those people will spend $50, and I think the theaters would say, well, why not charge them what they're willing to pay, and charge the person who's happy to see it on a matinee on Tuesday $10.
Right.
And everybody gets to go, but you pay a different price depending on who you are. That's what they would, and it's a way for them to make more revenue and keep their business going.
Sure.
That's what they would say, and I think there's some validity to that. And the flip side of it is, but the more people see it as like a premium, expensive experience, the less the movies become just this casual, cheap date. There's like, what are you going to do Saturday night? Oh, we'll go see a movie, right? That's what it was like when we were kids, and sometimes you didn't even know what you were going to see until you got there. And it was common for people to see a movie every week or two, and now it's common for people to see like one or two movies a year.
Yeah.
And the more people think of it, there's this bad cycle where the prices go up, and that causes people to see it as like a premium experience, that this is a special night out, they don't do as much, and then the more they don't go, the more the theaters are like, well, we'll have to jack up the prices more to come, and then it's going in the wrong direction. That's the problem with it.
Yeah, yeah. And I hear, and I think you did a great job explaining the theater's side of it, or at least the business perspective of it, because they've been really hurting for a long time. So, I mean, especially as all these streaming platforms, Amazon Prime making that switch earlier, maybe a year or two ago, I don't remember, to everyone that's signed up for Prime automatically being the ad tier,
Yes.
which is a big business decision and a very ballsy move on their part. To to Netflix really pushing people to. I mean, you could see all the main streamer platforms look like they're pushing people to the ad tier, because they're making the premium tier so much more expensive, and they're jacking up the prices every 3 to 6 months. I feel like, it almost makes sense that studios will follow suit.
Yeah, it's the same approach. You're right, which is that some people are willing to pay a lot to have a more premium experience, be it an IMAX screen, be it Amazon with no ads, and some people just literally don't have the money or don't think it's worth as much, and so they find ways to charge them less, which is you got to watch a bunch more ads when you watch your streaming video, or you have to see the movie at an inconvenient time in a smaller theater.
Right. I was thinking about your writing in particular, and your journalism in particular, that you're in a very polarized political world. And one thing I've noticed from consuming a lot of your content, your podcast, the book, and then whatever your posts are, you do an incredible job at maintaining an apolitical, completely, just on the fence, observing the facts as they are, and making it as clear as possible that there's no personal opinions behind that. I want to compliment you on that, because it's incredibly rare to find. But how do you find that balance? Is that your personality in general? What's that been like?
Thanks for noticing that. I do take that very seriously, and I work hard at it. I mean, it is, first of all, it's my job where I work. The Wall Street Journal newsroom is very much like we are apolitical. Like, that is our approach, is that, and I take pride. The Wall Street Journal, there have been surveys, it's the only news outlet in America that a majority of Democrats and a majority of Republicans trust.
Right.
And, that's unique, and I'm proud of that. And to do that, we have to keep our political opinions to ourselves. So it does take a lot of work to parse, and my editors often point out, hey, we could phrase that differently to make sure it doesn't, come across as biased. But it does I will say, like, some people would be like, I can't do that. I have to, I have to express myself, and it does
Hmm.
suit my personality. Where like I'm a very analytical person, and I tend not to want to share my opinions unless I really feel very confident in them and feel it's important that I say them.
Right.
And frankly, when it comes to politics, like, there's enough political opinions out there. There's more than enough political opinions. It's not the world. The internet is not, and the internet and news outlets are not short of political opinions. Coverage of the entertainment and media is not short of people opining on what the political agenda behind this film may or may not be, and how it intersects with this kind of American culture. So I think that's out there, and that's great if you want that. I think the value add that I hopefully bring is like deeply reported, extremely reliable, fact based journalism. That's what I focus on.
Yeah, well, it's really commendable, and I appreciate it. I think that it's something that we should all strive for.
Thank you.
And even and even if you say it, I think that I mean I've been watching, and I think that recently I've seen a couple of debates or conversations that have happened recently that
Mhm.
people like I've seen more civilized debates in a long time than I've seen in a
Oh,
long
great.
time, and I'm very happy about that. And I hope that
Mhm.
that's a trend that's continuing.
I hope so
Um,
too.
yeah, because we could really, use it
Hmm.
for sure.
Yeah.
So we mentioned earlier that Dune 3 is taking up all the all the IMAX screens, and that is a massive deal because Avengers is opening the same day or weekend. Is that correct?
The same weekend. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Marvel has been trying to get their grip back, I think, on the audience, and I think they're
Hmm.
trying to. I think they have to reclaim their storytelling
Hmm.
narrative. I
Yeah.
guess, um,
Yeah. Definitely.
and this seems like a really competitive move from another big player that directly. How big of a deal do you think this is for Marvel that they have to that they have to compete with this?
It is. It's definitely like a problem for them to not have the IMAX screenings. It's not just that they're going to lose a bit of revenue because you can make IMAX tickets the most expensive. It's not just that, but the IMAX brand at this point has almost come to signify like big
Hmm.
event movie. Like when the billboard says "see it in IMAX," then it's a big movie, right?
Right.
So the fact that the Dune Chapter 3 Part 3, sorry, will advertise that way, and Avengers can't, is a bit of a blow to them. But Disney could have picked a different date and where they could get IMAX screens, but
Yeah.
they stuck. Dune is getting the IMAX screens because Denis Villeneuve has this long-standing relationship with IMAX, and he shoots his movies with IMAX cameras.
Hmm.
And as soon as he said he was going to use the IMAX cameras for Dune Part 3, IMAX committed they would give him all their screens, and that's
Right.
that. And so it's sort of too bad for Disney and Avengers, but Disney wants to state because one week before Christmas is historically like a great date for big event movies, and then it's going to play all through Christmas break. A lot of people are off school and work, obviously, and there's definitely room for two movies to succeed. That's happened many times in history.
Sure.
So the price Disney would have to pay to get the IMAX screens would be to have a much less desirable date. So
Right.
that's the trade off that they're facing.
Do you think that 5 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
just the presence of a Marvel movie would have scared Dune off of that date?
That's a
And
good
that like
question.
this statement right now, like this is almost a statement by saying, "Hey, we don't like Disney could change." Like you said, Disney could change their mind, but Disney is not usually in the position to have to
Yeah.
back away from that kind of head-to-head confrontation.
No, that's a great point. That yes, I think in the 2010s, by the late 2010s, I mean I have to check my calendar, but no other big movie would dare open against a Marvel
Yeah.
movie because they all worked and they were all huge, and everybody who tried it in the early 2010s got their asses handed to them. Excuse my language.
Sure.
And I think that, yeah, I think Warner Brothers looks at it and is like, look, is Avengers going to flop? Unlikely, but is Avengers going to not? Avengers is not going to so dominate the conversation. There's no room for anything else.
Hmm.
And I, it is completely conceivable that Dune could open bigger than Avengers. I mean, it is not impossible.
Sure.
Like people are super excited that Denis Villeneuve is like an acclaimed filmmaker. That franchise has a lot of love. It is one of the biggest stars in the world. The footage they showed at CinemaCon was fantastic. I will
I want to
say.
hear about
The
that. Yeah.
room, I'd be happy to tell you about it. The room when, I would say that footage and the Odyssey were like some, and this little Disney movie, Fox movie called Whale Fall were some of the biggest reactions in the room. So I think Warner Brothers is completely confident that, yeah, and that, you're right. It says something that somebody feels confident that they can at least compete with Marvel, which
Yeah.
didn't used to be possible.
Yeah, and I think that's a good thing, by the way, because I think that a little bit of competition is
Mm-hmm.
just what you need. And
Yeah.
yeah, and I want to talk more about Disney after. I do want to hear more about CinemaCon because I heard a lot of reporting, and I watched a good amount on the internet. So I want to hear about that third movie that you mentioned, Disney Fox. You said,
Yeah, yeah. It's called
um,
Whale Fall. It's a Fox. So sorry to say Fox. You know, Disney. When Disney
yeah,
bought Fox, they shrunk the studio. They still label it called 20th Century Studios. That makes smaller movies for adults mostly. They're doing The Devil Wears Prada 2 because they own that IP. But they have this literary adaptation of a book called Whale Fall, and it's most of the movie is a boy who is a teenage boy alive in the stomach of a whale
wow,
who is like remembering who he had gone to find the whale, because that whale had killed his father. It's a bit of a Moby Dick thing, and he's flashing back to his dad. But the scene they showed is when the whale swallows the kid alive, which seems like, how could that not seem ridiculous? But it was riveting and completely believable. It happens in this way. I won't ruin for you, but the footage was like that kind of like edge of your seat, like this is really scary, and I didn't know what was coming, you know. So that was one of the biggest surprises of CinemaCon in a good way.
that's awesome. Yeah, that sounds great. And again, that's another sounds like another win for the new movie, the risky
Original
creative
movie,
thing
yeah.
for
I mean,
sure.
yeah. I hope it works, but I think I was definitely excited for it.
Yeah, yeah. And Devil Wears Prada 2 is up there. I mean, I'm seeing on the slate with Avengers and like
Mm-hmm.
Disney's marketing the Devil Wears Prada 2 with some of their biggest franchises and biggest movies coming out with Toy Story and Avengers and all those
Yeah,
other movies.
yeah, it's gonna be big. It's gonna be big, and that goes to show another. At the same time, the originality is doing better than it has for a while, but so is nostalgia.
Yeah,
Nostalgia is a really powerful force at the box office, and like 20 years is a pretty sweet spot for people who are like, it's been long enough that I have fond memories for that movie, and I want to go back again. And maybe I was a teenager when I saw it, and now I'm middle age, or I was 25, now I'm in my 40s, whatever. So that's what it's been for that movie, and like millennial women are just like so excited to be turning out into. It's an event movie for millennial women, right, who don't
sure.
give a crap about like action adventure films. That's what Disney's 20th has got with this film, and it's like looking like it's going to open really, really well. And yeah, it is as much an event movie for a certain segment of the audience as like the Michael Jackson film was for fans of him who have
Yeah,
nostalgia for him.
yeah, definitely. And it feels so hard to for like to not say like listen, there's obviously such a thing as overdoing it, and there's such a thing as
Mm-hmm.
like leaving something
Mm-hmm.
be
Yeah.
for a while, and then until everyone misses it just a little bit,
Yeah,
and then
exactly. You have to find that balance where you're like, you keep, you give people something that they love and they're happy to see more of, but people don't feel if you're overdoing it, people start to feel like it's cynical.
yeah.
And it's not coming from like a creatively inspired place. And I have not seen The Devil Wears Prada 2, but it sounds like it's something that at least the fans are going to feel comes from a place of love and not a place of like cheap cash grab.
Yeah, and I was actually going to ask you this, but I think I'm going to answer the question myself, which is I was going to ask if you think you could refresh a franchise, but I was really impressed. I didn't watch it in theaters, but with the James Gunn Superman, and I didn't dream that after all the Superman movies that there were and all the different variations that I'd be particularly interested in it. I was actually confused why DC would be making another bet, like on
Yeah,
another
yeah, yeah.
Superman, and
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, James Gunn is great in Guardians of the Galaxy. He's a ton of fun, and he does an amazing job for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm pretty surprised. I think that I'm excited. I'm more excited about the upcoming DC freshness and the new vigor that's coming into their slate.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping that Avengers could kind of reignite that. And Kevin Feige almost seems to hint at that happening by saying we should re-release Avengers and Endgame beforehand because like we kind of want to just rebrand, reassociate it. He didn't say that obviously, but I
Mm-hmm.
mean it sounds like the implication to me. What do you think about that?
There's a lot of stuff there. I think that where DC has learned some lessons from Marvel, and look, DC wanted to be successful as Marvel in the 2010s, and they failed, right? There's no question about it. But now they have the benefit of seeing Marvel's rise and Marvel's downturn recently,
Right.
and knowing, just like creating movies that feel like homework, that are all the same and all part of the same universe, can people have lost interest in that. It feels overwhelming, and they don't they want to see the movie they want to see and not see the movie they don't want to see, and the streaming show. So DC's approach has been like very light. They're doing very light connections between stuff, and each movie and TV show is meant really to stand on its own and even do different genres. So, like, Supergirl is like sort of a buddy action, with two women, buddy sci-fi quest, right? And Clayface is gonna be a horror movie.
I just heard about
Um,
that this weekend.
yeah,
Yeah.
if you've seen the teaser trailer that's out, I mean, it looks, if you didn't know it's a DC movie, you would just say it looks like a really scary body horror film. And you can do that within DC, and that's their approach. Is you can do any kind of movie, any kind of genre within our universe of characters. So it's an interesting approach. It definitely, I think, allows for more creativity, which is cool.
Yeah.
It's that's never been Marvel's brand. It's not like Marvel is a little bit. Marvel's more everything's connected, and there's some variations, but still you kind of know the kind of box that a Marvel movie sits in generally. So it's interesting going forward to see if they're willing to push out of that more. I think with Avengers Doomsday, they're basically trying to recapture the magic of what they had with Endgame. They're bringing back Downey, and they're bringing back Chris Evans, and Captain America's alive again. It's the same directors again, the Russo brothers, and they literally have like pretty much every character who's still justifiable to include. They're
But
bringing back.
does that excite you, like personally? And again, this is like, I know you generally like to be reporting and objective,
Yeah.
but like that doesn't even excite me as much anymore.
Yeah. Here's I'll keep my opinion myself on this one, but I'll tell you what
Okay,
I think
sure.
are like the costs and like the risks and the possible rewards, right?
Okay.
The risks are that it could feel desperate. It could feel like they're just like, hey, do you like this before? We'll give it to you again, but bigger and more and more
Yeah.
and more. It feels like they're just throwing everything they've got at you. And it could feel on the other hand, you could say, well, I think they have definitely learned their lesson that they overdid it with too many streaming shows and movies, and because Feige was paying attention to all the shows, the movies kind of like reduced quality, like stuff like Ant-Man 3 and the Marvels. I mean, those were not up to the caliber of what you expect from Marvel Studios. And I think they definitely are paying more attention there. They're only releasing one movie this year, if you don't count Spider-Man, which Sony is. There's only one Marvel Studios movie from Disney coming this year, and they understand their movies can't feel like homework anymore, and they're basically doing a reset. All this stuff all the kind of continuity from the past 5 years is kind of being put to the side, and they're going back and they're connecting back to Endgame and going from there. So they've also learned their lesson, and they're trying to say, hey, we know that you didn't like some of what we've given you the past few years, and we're trying to give you what you like and create a new springboard to go forward more successfully.
I would love for that to be the case. I hope I hope that is the case.
Right. That's what the fans want. And I will say, like, Marvel fans love Downey. They love Downey, and there's a lot of excitement for him to come back. And I think it's actually smart to put him in a different role, to be like, hey, we respect that Iron Man is over,
But that's what was fun about Chris Evans in Deadpool 2, right? I mean,
true.
I was so blown away, and then
That was really fun.
what he was doing to the budget was absolutely hysterical. I thought that was too great.
Yeah, 100%.
Right. Yeah. It's too great. Yeah, I hope they're right. I hope it succeeds, and I think that they are compelling enough storytellers that if they are, I believe in their talent. I believe that I like to hope that corporate bureaucracy kind of got in the way of the creative output, and kind of forced a lot of decisions that people probably should have had more time to make. And I hope that if like with time again, and like you mentioned, they're slowing down 1 or 2 movies a year, if that you could come back to really great storytelling in addition to lovable characters.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. They made, they were basically ordered by Disney to make a ton of streaming shows for Disney Plus, and everybody realizes that was a mistake.
Okay, well, we're on the Disney topic. We're gonna keep
Hmm.
on going then.
Okay.
Um, we'll keep on going. Josh Tomorrow and Dana
Yeah.
Walden,
Hmm.
who were competing for the CEO spot. Josh won out. This is
Hmm.
the second Parks guy to run to try to take over from Bob Iger,
Yeah.
and Michael Eisner. I've read in James Stewart's Disney War said that
Hmm.
he was going to be the last of the creative CEOs.
Hmm.
And I have no doubt. I don't think that he's wrong. I think he's correct in that. What do you think? What was your reporting on this decision making, or what do you think about it? And what's Dana's new role, and what's Josh's plan?
Sure. Okay. So, even though he's a second Parks guy, Jamar's very different than Bob Chapek, who
Okay,
was,
how so?
Chapek was a real kind of operational number cruncher guy. Chapek was a guy you bring in to be like, hey, we need to get this budget under control. We need to make this division that's not profitable again. We need to figure out a process. And Chapek was not a creative person, didn't pretend to be a creative person, didn't really know how to work with creative people. He was a process guy, and
Right.
he was very good at that. But it turned out that like when you're leading a creative company, that was a real problem because he didn't know how to manage creative people effectively, and he sort of really lost their respect. And there were just a ton of missteps along the way, and that's why Iger kind of had to come back. Um, Josh D'Amaro, although he does come from Parks, he definitely is more in the Iger mode, where he has spent a lot of time getting to know creative people. He knows how to work with them. He's much more a people person. He's not so much of like, I'm going to grind down the numbers as much as possible just to get profits out. I mean, he cares about profits for sure, but he doesn't really revel in the budget crunching the way that Bob Chapek did. I would say he's incredibly charismatic, which is an important trait for a Disney CEO because it's a very public facing role, because Disney is a company that people have such strong feelings for.
Hmm.
And I will say, as far as what we expect from him, you know, he is he's really bet a lot on trying to use digital technology to make the company move faster. Disney's a very slow moving company. They make big movies that take years. They build theme parks that take 5 or more years, you know, and everything they've tried to do online, frankly, has been pretty weak.
Hmm.
Um, and he wants to use digital technology, video game engine technology, stuff like that, to make the company's production processes move faster, so they can go from idea to movie, and from movie to theme park ride, and from theme park ride to consumer product faster than they've moved
Right.
before, and more efficiently, less expensively. That's what he hopes to do, to like keep the company as creative as it's ever been, but use tech to make it faster and cheaper. Um, and then look,
That'd
they
be
created
awesome.
this. Yeah, that's the goal, right? Much easier said than done, but
Right.
that's his general goal. And Dana, the company wanted to keep Dana Walden, who was the other top contender for the job, and to keep her, they gave her this newly created, elevated role of president and chief creative officer. Basically, I mean, she's in charge of the movie studio and the TV streaming operation. So all creative content production goes through her, and she's a veteran TV executive. She's well respected. Um, and we'll see whether Josh and Dana can get along and
Yeah.
run things effectively. Hollywood can often be a place of vicious corporate infighting, so
Right. Michael
we'll have to
Ovitz
see.
and Michael Eisner come
And
to
Michael
mind.
Eisner, of course, if you read Disney War, you know about that really well. Yeah,
Right. Right.
that's the bad version. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. I mean, I guess a good version is something like DreamWorks, where those superstars
Yes,
came
yeah.
together and made a
Hmm.
studio.
Yes, 100%. There are positive examples of it. It definitely can be
Sure.
done, but it requires a lot of ego checking, and it requires you know it requires people being able to balance like their business responsibilities and making sure the company's creativity is still at the at the top of its game.
Right, right. I was thinking to myself when I was reading about this. I was kind of rooting for Dana,
Hmm.
but the reason why is because I value the film and the streaming side. I value the creative side, so I was hoping that she'd win that out. And but I couldn't. I wasn't surprised because the parks is really Disney's. Money. It's a money printing factory.
Sure. Yeah,
And
you're right. I didn't even mention that, but of course, like one of the main, them picking tomorrow, um, also signals the fact that like even though Disney's business, everything at Disney starts with the creativity. It starts
right.
with the with animated movies, right? Especially at its core, you could say. But on the other hand, most of the money now is made by theme parks and consumer products, but especially the theme parks and the cruise ships, which are the businesses that DeMauro came up in and that he oversaw. Those have grown tremendously in the past few years, whereas the movie business has been kind of stagnant, as we discussed, and streaming makes a lot less profit than TV used to. So the
Yeah.
company really, the creative stuff, the movies and TV, and to some extent, they exist in order to drive the theme parks and to sell toys and get people and inspire rides that get people into theme parks where the profits are huge. And it's important for a Disney CEO to understand those businesses, and Josh D'Amaro understands them very well.
Yeah, yeah, and that really is really what I guess what I would imagine it came down to, because I mean, especially at a company under as much scrutiny as they've been under, and they've been
Yeah,
under a ton of pressure. I mean, listen, the other streaming services have, people could trash Netflix all they want.
yeah,
They put out great content, and
hmm
they get a lot of eyeballs on them, and people could trash. Um, Paramount, I mean, David, and we'll talk about them. David Ellison has been buying everything, and like it almost, I've been feeling recently like Paramount is the conservative dad's Netflix.
yes, yeah, 100%. There's a lot of dad shows on
Right.
Paramount Plus. That's
Yeah,
for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. And especially with the UFC now being integrated and like this whole
Yeah,
and Taylor Sheridan basically having a blank check to just do whatever he wants, and
yep,
succeeding every single time too. I mean,
yes,
it's really
yes,
awesome.
amazing
But that
track record.
yeah, it puts, I'm sure it puts a lot of pressure on Disney in a lot of ways, and it doesn't
hmm
leave you. I mean, I guess Dana didn't really like from a business perspective and as a
hmm
public company perspective. I guess she didn't stand much of a chance in that way.
Yeah, she was always the underdog because look, Disney Plus is doing fine, but not great.
Yeah.
It is not, it's nowhere close to Netflix, it's nowhere close to Amazon Prime, and although it has more subscribers, I mean, when you look at like who's making the most buzz talk about shows, I mean, Paramount Plus, like you said, HBO Max, like
Yeah,
they
it's good,
have
really great
they
stuff.
have that they have that prestige in a way that Disney Plus and Hulu they have. I mean, they have Shogun. I mean, they have stuff, but I would say they're not up. They're not. They're not. They just don't have as much buzz, and they don't have as high of a track record of hits. And yeah, if you're thinking of who should run Disney, who understands what makes this company run right now, where the profits
Hmm.
come from, for the first time in its history, you wouldn't say a film or TV person. That's just not
Yeah,
where the heart of the company is anymore.
it's really interesting to think about. It really is.
Yeah. Yes.
And I'm reading a biography right now, and it's by a gentleman named Mark Elliott, who told me he's the only other person, one of the few other people that wrote a biography on Disney. I think Bob Thomas is the other big one, and he told me, we did a podcast together, that Disney, when he wrote this book, I guess the late '90s and early 2000s, and when Disney basically offered to cooperate with him and give him complete access to the archives, as long as he would give them final cut, I guess, of what
Yeah.
his
Right.
version of what the book was going to end up being. And he pushed back, and I mean, they gave him a lot of grief, and they gave him a very, very hard time, um,
I'm not surprised.
reporting on them, huh?
I'm not surprised to hear that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But so I'm reading this biography, and one of the things that he made that I found consistent all across the board is that when Disney himself was making these movies, he would often use the funding from the park, I guess, from merchandising,
Mm.
to continue funding movies and to break ground technologically, and have the studio focus on the film, and that would inevitably kind of maintain their reputation, which allowed more selling, more merchandising, more parking, and
Yeah.
then you expand into greater forms of storytelling.
Yeah.
And now they have a different type of corporate responsibility to be conservative and risk averse,
Yeah.
which comes down to this type of conversation that we're having now and how they're making decisions.
Yeah. And Disney was very risk averse in the movie making in the 2010s. I mean, they didn't make. It was all franchise movies in the 2010s, if you recall. It was all
Yeah.
Marvel, Pixar, Star Wars, and those live action remakes of the fairy tales. Like that's pretty much all they did.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was. They had a couple. They had a couple of good stuff in the earlier with Frozen and Tangled. I think those were like real home runs, and those were like cultural home runs too, and like a really.
Yeah. Yeah. That was
I
the
would call
only
it
place
similar
they
to
were
like the
making.
'90s for sure.
Yeah, the only time they were making the only original movies Disney was making then was in animation. That's it. And you're right, they absolutely had, like, Frozen was a monster hit, Coco was a monster hit. I mean, they made some very good original movies. Zootopia, yeah.
Do you have, can you maybe explain? I don't know if you have more information because you've also been on the AI side as well as entertainment side. What happened with the Sora AI deal with Disney and what was going on?
Yeah, I'll tell you what I know, which is, so Sora, the Sora app, especially the consumer app, right, launched in, I think, September, and it had a lot of heat at first, and people in
Mm-hmm.
Hollywood were like, "What are we going to do about this?"
Because it was
And
really good, right?
it was good. I mean, it's good. The video generation was high quality, and the app at first was getting a lot of attention, and people were making all. The first step Hollywood took was to get OpenAI to not allow blatant copyright infringement on there,
Right.
and Disney, Bob Iger, to his credit, has often said, like, we need to embrace technology, not only try to, like, keep it at bay. And this was like a very classic Iger move to say, well, we'll make a partnership with them, and so, we'll allow them to use some of our characters, and in exchange for that, instead of them paying us, they'll give us $1 billion worth of equity in OpenAI, which is a tiny piece of it, which could be worth more,
Hmm.
and they could use some of the sort of videos on Disney Plus. And it kind of reminded me of, when Steve Jobs launched the video iPod, Disney was the first company to put its TV shows and movies available to watch on there.
Right.
So that was all great. The thing they didn't anticipate was that OpenAI, loses a lot of money because AI is very expensive to develop, and they were sort of starting to lose some momentum to, like, Google Gemini and Anthropic,
Yeah.
Claude, and they realized that they have a limited amount of, really what it is they call the compute, a limited amount of, like, server
Sure.
chips, a lot of chips in data centers to develop AI and run AI, and they can't make every. So they decided that, okay, we need to focus on the things that are most important to us, and they realized that, like, being involved in video was not the most important thing they're doing, and actually Sora, after a huge launch, Sora was kind of starting to lose interest in people. So OpenAI decided this is not worth our time and our limited amount of compute that we can devote to projects. We want to devote it
Wow. So
all.
that's what happened.
That's what happened. They were like, we want to devote it all to making ChatGPT great, to competing with Claude for, like, enterprise coding stuff, and we're going to sacrifice the Sora team. It's just not worth our energy. And they cut it, and they got rid of it, and literally Disney found out, like, a few hours before it was announced to the world.
Wow.
Hmm.
And that's a big deal to
Yeah,
it. Disney's such a huge player to not
yeah.
tell them something like that a couple hours before is considered
Right.
is considered a massive.
Well, it goes to
It's
show
not
you
it's
where
not
the power.
normal,
It
right?
goes to show you where the power is in the world right now.
Yeah,
Like, Disney needed OpenAI a lot more than OpenAI needed Disney, right?
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, and now
I
now Disney needs to figure out what their AI strategy is going to be. They were going to try tying it to Sora, so now they need to figure something else out.
Yeah, I've been learning. I just read a great book by a woman named Karen Howe, who's a tech
Yeah,
journalist,
yeah.
and
The
she just wrote a
Empire of
book.
AI.
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
And she really broke down. I didn't even realize everything you just explained. She had just elaborated on and explained in her book, and I didn't realize how expensive it is. And it really got me thinking as to the question of the efficiency and the trade-off, and so whether or
yeah,
not what they're providing is what OpenAI or what most of these LLMs are providing are worth the expense of what it takes to actually generate it and create it,
sure.
um, for sure. And and on top of it all, Anthropic I heard this week is valued at $1 trillion and almost certainly going to IPO this year. So it looks
Yeah.
like more trouble for OpenAI on even in the competitive front.
Yes, absolutely. OpenAI seemed like they were the dominant player, and now they are absolutely, at minimum, in a very tight race with Anthropic and Google. Yeah.
Yeah, and how do you know how this works? And I don't know if you know how this works. I just saw within a couple of days, Amazon invested I think 5 billion into Anthropic, and then Google announced a couple of days later they're also investing five
Yeah.
billion into.
Hmm.
Uh, who does it? So I know that one thing that happened with OpenAI is that there was an inherent competition in the company between the safety team and the commercial team
Yeah.
that had to raise enough money to be competitive in the safety research. Is
Yeah.
the way that
Hmm.
they phrase it to the public, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And they would get their money from Microsoft, who initially injected them with $1 billion, and I think 10 and more since then. but they were now held. They had to answer to Microsoft for saying, "Hey,
Hmm.
you know, we got $1 billion from you. We have to give you access to X, Y, and Z we're working on."
Yeah.
Does this these two enormous conglomerates, Amazon and Google, are both investing in Anthropic? Doesn't that put them in a very precarious position when all the competition is investing together in in one company?
Some, you mean, does OpenAI in a precarious position? A bit, but I would say that the reason Google and Amazon are investing is remember they are two of the three biggest cloud computing companies.
Hmm.
So regular mid-sized companies, they get all their cloud computing from Amazon Web Services or Google Cloud or Microsoft Azure. And when they
Right.
sign up for that, you often buy software through it. So Anthropic wants to offer Claude Enterprise through AWS and through Google Cloud, and Google and Amazon want to have it on there because it
Ah.
brings people in. So that's why that investment kind of benefits everybody.
Hmm.
So previously, OpenAI has had an exclusive relationship with Microsoft because Microsoft invested early in them. But just recently, their deal has changed where OpenAI is allowed to take investment and do cloud work with other companies. And this deal with Anthropic is not exclusive, and it would not shock me to see Google or Amazon make a similar kind of a deal with OpenAI as well.
Oh, really? So you could see
Yeah.
them spreading the money around and just trying to integrate both.
Absolutely, yeah. They want it. They want to. If they think like enough of their customers want to have access to it, and they want to make sure that they are, that they have a tight relationship to make sure that OpenAI will be on, say, AWS for a long time to come. You could completely see that coming. I think that the tech giants like Microsoft, Google, Amazon, they can spread their money very widely. They have $5 billion is not a lot of money for them.
Yeah, certainly, certainly, certainly. Yeah, and I get, the way I was thinking about it was that you had to be beholden to someone, and who would it be? But you're saying there's enough, like it's just a software they're buying, and like all they need is just access permission to use it. So like,
It's a partnership. They're just
right, right.
basically they're aligning themselves more closely as partners is what they're doing. They're not getting $5 billion in a company that's will probably be worth, as you said, potentially $1 trillion by the end of the year is not very much equity, actually, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Right, not at all. Um, Back to Disney real quick. Josh Tomorrow just posted today that he plans on hanging on to ESPN. Now, sports and streaming has been a whole mess, and I'm going to hold myself
Mm-hmm.
back from using the word cluster, but that really
Mm-hmm.
feels more
Yeah.
like what it's like. But but I feel like this is so antithetical to everything we've been hearing about ESPN for a
Mm-hmm.
decade.
Yeah.
That like
Mm-hmm.
that it's losing them money, and they're not sure what to do with it, and they're not sure whether to spin it off or to sell it or to what's going on over here?
Yeah. I mean, Disney's relationship with ESPN has always been weird because the rest of Disney is kind of what they call a flywheel, where everything is connected, right? Like
Yeah.
the entertainment content they make they sell toys and they shows up in the theme parks and so on, and vice versa. Sports is just its own thing, and it was a very profitable business for a long time because every cable system had to have ESPN, so they paid a lot of money. Everybody had cable, but everybody got ESPN in their package. Cable companies paid $5 a month for every one of their subscribers to Disney ESPN. It was hugely profitable. Now, obviously, cable, is withering because of cord cutting. ESPN makes a lot less money. So, I don't know for sure why Disney decided to hold on to it. It could be, the ostensible reason is, and there's some truth to this, that in Disney's looking for a competitive advantage, they want to. A lot of people sign up for Disney Plus, Hulu, and ESPN together, right? And
Right.
that's sort of a lot of people who want sports will be like, well, I'll just spend a few more bucks to add on Disney Plus and Hulu with it, right? And so it brings them more customers that way. So that's sort of like that. That's their best argument for why they want to have it.
But that
The
doesn't
flip
sound like a
side,
great argument as far as like you sports are all over the place. Like I mean,
yes.
and I could imagine it'd probably piss off more customers than it would be than it would actually
Well, it
be.
pisses people off, but if you're a sports fan, you have to have ESPN. If you're a sports fan and you've cut the cord, you don't use like
Yeah.
Comcast cable or DirecTV or YouTube TV. You have to subscribe to the ESPN streaming service. I mean, it doesn't have close to everything, but it has a lot. You
Right.
know, I mean, most obviously like Monday Night Football. And they have a playoffs, and they have a ton of important college football games, for example. And they have some of the NBA. Like you have to have it.
Okay.
So that's that. The sports streaming is worth something to people, and the more people cut the cord, the more valuable it's going to be.
Right.
But it's also possible, obviously, that Disney may have said, "Hey, I'm sure there's a price at which Disney would be willing to sell ESPN," and maybe they looked around and were like, "We're not going to get that price,
Right.
frankly." It's all about how much value does it bring us? How much money could we get for selling it? And does maybe a lot of people don't want to buy ESPN right now, at least at a big price, given the problems that are happening in the sports market.
Do you think I don't know the answer to this question, but just from a strictly financial perspective, are they even in like the realm of competing for sports rights to kind of put a bunch of big sports on or bigger sports or more sports on ESPN to make it worth keeping and to try to kind of like listen, we have the brand, everyone knows ESPN, like let's just try to get a couple more NFL games, a couple of different sports rights that other that have been spread throughout these other
Yeah.
streaming services and
Well,
try to make a blitz for it.
they're never going to get even the majority of stuff. Partly, like they don't have that much money, but
Okay.
also the leagues don't want that. Like for the leagues make more money by having a bunch of bidders, and they want to have as many different media and tech companies as possible having some sports because that's healthy ecosystem in the long run for the NFL and the NBA and MLB because then they always have more buyers, right? The last thing they want, if ESPN dominated the market, then the next time the rights come up, maybe ESPN's the only bidder, and that would be terrible for the sports
Yeah.
leagues. So that's why what they want Monday Night Football on ESPN and Sunday Night Football on NBC and Thursday Night Football on Amazon and the Sunday day games on CBS and on Fox. Like that's perfect for them because everybody's doing well. But you do point to an issue where on the one hand, ESPN needs to keep a certain amount of key sports or else the network has no more relevance.
Right.
But the tech companies are getting into sports in a big way. Amazon is into sports in a big way right now.
Apple
I
TV.
predict you are going, Apple TV. Apple TV doesn't have a lot, but they
Yeah,
have
but
a bit.
you can see they have a desire to start getting
You can
into
see they do it. Here's what's really the danger: is that YouTube could start buying more games for its free service. Like, yes, YouTube is already a Sunday ticket. You got to pay a lot of money for, but YouTube put one NFL game last year on for free on ad-supported YouTube. Then they have some soccer games, I believe, in Latin America. They could easily decide to buy more sports rights for free, because they can make so much money with advertising on YouTube. And Amazon and Google have more money than Disney has ever had in its entire existence.
Right.
Available. Like Disney, if Amazon and or Google YouTube really want to write a big check, Disney, ESPN can't compete. So
Right.
that is the danger that ESPN is going to be facing in the years to come. Is they're up against much bigger and richer tech companies.
Yeah, and I don't know much about any of their content, but historically their non-sports content hasn't done as well, right? I don't know anything about ESPN. Yeah,
Yeah,
the
no,
original
absolutely.
content that you'd call it.
Yeah, they've done a little bit, and it's never really caught on. Frankly, if anything, ESPN is more reliant than ever on the games. Like they used, like SportsCenter doesn't get anything close to the ratings it used to because people if you want to like get your sports news and information, you can get that in a million places online. If you want to see clips of sports, you're better off getting those on like Instagram and YouTube,
Sure,
right?
sure.
And if you want to hear like ex players and commentators talking about sports,
Go to Twitter.
There's a million Twitter or podcasts, right?
Yeah.
So that's all the stuff ESPN used to wrap around the games, and people are getting that a ton of other places now, right? The only thing ESPN has that nobody else has is certain games.
Wow. Huh. Oh man, I don't know. It doesn't sound like a winning strategy to me, but
I think it is a very challenge. It is a more and more challenging business every year. That's for sure.
yeah, and poor Josh tomorrow was just kind of given the problem. I'm sure he knew it existed beforehand, but like between this and having to lay people off like within the first couple of weeks of his being a CEO. I hope that he gets through this well and know that a lot of every company's doing it. Nike's doing it. Meta's doing it. There are cuts everywhere. I want the company to do well. I hope he settles in nicely.
Yeah, if you care about like movies and TV and entertainment, then you should want these companies to be healthy. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, I would love to hear a little bit of the inside of what CinemaCon is like,
Okay.
and what the energy was like this year.
Hmm.
What's the usual schedule like? You go to Vegas.
Hmm.
There's a bajillion people that everyone knows all around. Is everyone? Are there particular hotels that are assigned to like different like groups? Is everyone meeting up in one place? What's the environment like?
So CinemaCon all takes place at Caesar's Palace.
Okay.
So most people are staying there,
Hmm.
and all the presentations are in the the Coliseum, which is usually where big singers perform. So for the
Sure.
week of CinemaCon from Monday through Thursday, there's no performances. It's just booked for these studio presentations,
Wow.
and then Caesars has like a conference center that's taken over by CinemaCon, and there's tons of companies that sell different movie theater chairs and projectors and new kinds of popcorn and whatever, and they take over these rooms, and you can check it out, and they're trying to convince theaters to buy their stuff,
Cool.
and people are having meetings all the time, and there's tons of ads for there's like a poster for every movie coming out in the next year if you walk down the halls, and I will say it's all built around these studio presentations, and there's the first one is Monday. The first two actually are on Monday, and they go through until Thursday afternoon. There's pretty much two every day, and then in between those, for myself, I try to meet with different sources who might work, people who work for different movie theaters around the country. It's a good opportunity for me to meet them, interview them, talk about what they're going on with their businesses, what their challenges are, what they think's interesting happening in the business. So I have a bunch of meetings, sit downs, lunches, drinks, etc. with people, and I go to the presentations, and then sometimes different studios or theater companies will have will have drinks before a presentation or a party afterwards, and you can sometimes go to those and meet some people and talk more. And for a reporter like me, it's just a great opportunity to just to get a sense of all the movies coming out in the next year, and to meet a lot of people who are useful for me to know. Yeah.
Totally, totally. And what was were you there the last couple of years? How was this? How did this year feel, especially with that? There's a lot of movement going on in the industry now. So
Yeah.
what was the environment like?
This is the second year in a row. The year before that, I was in the AI field, so I didn't go in 2024. But this
Gotcha.
year, I will say it was definitely more optimistic. One reason is there's always been a lot of fight over windows, over how long from when the movie opens in a theater to when it's available to watch
Right.
online for VOD. And everybody's kind of agreed finally on 45 days, which is actually what the theaters wanted. The studios have pretty much all agreed to that. So there was no arguing over windows, which was
That's awesome.
so people were positive about that, and people were feeling very good that so far the box office is up this year, and it's been down so many years in a row that just having any positive momentum made people feel good. So in that sense, it was a much more optimistic CinemaCon with more positive energy than I saw last year.
So much fun. So cool.
Hmm. Yeah.
What were some of your favorite presentations?
Well, I mentioned Whale Fall was a big surprise. I will say the Dune. They showed the first 7 minutes or so of Dune,
Okay.
and I liked the first two Dune movies. I wasn't the biggest fan. I liked them, but this was, in my opinion, I will just say, it was at a whole other level. It was basically, without giving too much away, the first 7 minutes, it was imagine the D-Day scene of Saving Private Ryan, but on an alien planet with sci-fi tech. Like
Wow.
that, but it was that level of it felt like documentary kind of filmmaking, really up close with these soldiers. I didn't expect that in a Dune movie, and it was extremely well done, and I would say the room was really really impressed by that. So it's also another reason why I think they can feel very good going up against Avengers. They showed a great scene that people were really really impressed by.
I'm so happy to hear that. I love that.
Yeah.
I have to, the truth is, I tried to watch Dune 1 probably 4 times.
Okay,
And,
not your thing.
you know what? I wanted it to be my thing more than I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
it was. But I also, particularly because I remember when Dune 2 came out, everyone was raving about it, and I was like, you know what? Even if I have to push through Dune 1 to get to watch Dune 2 in theaters, I'll
Yeah.
do it. You think I should
Yeah.
try to watch Dune 2 to watch to be able to get to Dune 3 in theaters?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the spot of Dune. I mean, here's what I would say. I always say this to people: you don't have to watch a movie anymore. Frankly, you can just read the Wikipedia summary of the plot, or
Yeah.
ask. Sometimes if I'm seeing a movie and I haven't, or TV show I haven't watched the prior season in a long time, I'll just ask I'll ask an AI to just like,
Yeah.
hey, hey, remind me of everything I need to know. Go, before I watch the sequel.
Yeah. I hope. What did you see the Toy Story 5
I did.
commercial? Because I thought that looked awesome.
I did. I'd actually seen it earlier because I did a story on Pixar in March,
Oh,
and I
cool.
went up. I went up to Emeryville, where their headquarters is for the story, and they showed me some of the footage. So yes, I saw it, and it's definitely like I would comfortably predict that movie is going to be one of the biggest movies of the year, quite possibly the biggest movie of the year. I mean, it looks like it has all the elements people love about Toy Story, and it's dealing with a tablet, right? Which is obviously like
Yeah.
what every parent of a kid is like their biggest crisis, right? Is like, how do I deal with technology for my kids? And wouldn't it be nice if they just played with dolls and action figures the way that we used to 20 years ago? So it feels very current. It simultaneously feels current, and yet also captures the nostalgia a lot of people have for those characters. Which is why I think it will get like middle-aged adults, and people can feel very happy bringing their 7-year-olds to see it also.
I'm really looking forward to it, and I was definitely hesitant about Toy Story 4. I remember liking it, but this trailer really was really impressed on me. It stuck with me for sure.
Yeah, it
Um,
was a good trip. Hmm.
I would hope for, yeah. I mean, I'm really hoping for a big year. It feels exciting, and it does.
Yeah, yeah. Look, there's a lot of like people are saying this to me. Like, look, if you just look at the cadence of the next few months, like um, Devil Wears Prada is almost certainly going to do really well, and The Mandalorian and Grogu we'll see, but it's a big movie coming on Memorial
Yeah.
Day. Like, there's a shot, we'll see, and then you have like Toy Story in June, which is like guaranteed to be massive. In July, you have a new Minions movie that they showed some of it in CinemaCon. Like, it looks kind of like cool. Like, they're definitely trying some new stuff. I'll give them, and we'll see. And then that month also has the Odyssey, which is almost certainly going to be massive, and it has a new Spider-Man movie that's almost certainly going to be
Wow.
massive.
Yeah.
So we have, like, the next few months, there's a lot of opportunities for a lot of success.
Yeah. It might even it might even encourage me to get my stubs passed for the first time since my
Oh,
son was
really?
born.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah, yeah. I can see that. That might be a good value if you're going to see them all. Yeah,
I've been, yeah, I keep on making very brave attempts at renewing them, and I'll keep them for like, I'll be like, you know what? My kid is finally old enough that he's sleeping through the night. I could go to a movie even by myself for
yeah.
a couple hours.
Uh huh.
Doesn't, and then I keep it for a month. I'm like, it's not happening.
Right, you're not actually seeing enough to be worth the money. Yeah, yeah.
No, no, but I hope so. And then I appreciate your time. I want to let you go in a couple of minutes. I want to just ask real quickly about some of your thoughts on this Warner Brothers Paramount merger, because I'd be awfully remiss if we didn't talk about it at all.
Yeah.
And first of all, I don't know whether there's a Twitter big deal or Twitter thing or not a big thing or anything. I heard that like 48 or 49% of the funding from the deal is coming from the Middle East. Do you know about that? What does that mean?
Yeah,
What does that mean?
49% of the equity. There's also a lot of debt, I will say, but of the
Okay.
actual equity portion of it is coming from the Middle East because, frankly, if you want to get tens of billions of dollars these days, one
Yeah.
of the best sources is Middle Eastern money. Um, it's they're because they're a minority. Paramount people would say, well, they're not going to have any influence. Like David Ellison will still have control of this company, but they're going to have a voice that he has to talk to them because they're big investors of his, and this he's Paramount is going to own, if this deal closes, like 2 news networks, and there's Middle Eastern money controlling 2 major news networks. I understand why people are concerned about it, I would say, but yeah, they're going to own. They're going to be they're going to be major investors. That's absolutely true.
So you made the difference. You made the distinction between the debt and the funding or the
Yeah.
equity rather. Can you just
Yes.
explain that if in case anyone doesn't understand what
Sure.
that means?
So Paramount is paying, I believe, $110 billion. That's how much this deal is worth in total. So where does that money come from? Like, I don't have all this. I don't have the split in front of me, but
Sure.
some portion of it is equity, meaning like they're just writing a check, right? Like they're like, hey, Warner Bros. Hey, here's cash that we have, right? It's from some of it's from Larry Ellison, some of it's from other investors, some of it's from cash Paramount already has, and a big chunk of it's from the Middle East. But some of it is debt, right? Which is like a bank is essentially loaning Paramount
Ah,
tens of billions of dollars, and then Paramount's going to have to pay that back in the coming years, right? They don't have to pay back the equity investors. the equity investors want to own Paramount going forward, and they think eventually, hopefully, Paramount will be worth more in the
Right.
future. You know, but the debt holders like expect to get paid back with interest over the next several years.
Right. Do you think there's going to be? I just thought of this right now, just because I asked you about the Netflix, not rather the Paramount being the dad's conservative station.
Yeah.
Do you think there's going to be any kind of tension with the HBO crowd? Because the HBO crowd has always been looking to push the envelope
Yeah.
in a lot of
No.
different ways.
Yeah. No. I
Yeah.
mean, I think actually, uh, Casey Bloys on the HBO team are going to be left alone to do what they do because they do it well.
I hope so.
Right? Absolutely. I think basically Paramount right now. What are they succeeding with? They're succeeding with the dad shows, and and they have some key big NFL games, of course, on the UFC. They have a lot of. They're basically succeeding with men, and they
Right.
don't do very well with non-sports fans, with women,
Yeah.
and they don't have a lot of like prestige shows, right? They don't have a lot of like the kind of shows that win Emmys and that the kind of more affluent, college-educated audiences who really love high-class entertainment want. That's obviously what HBO is great at, right? So they're very complementary, actually. And what you're gonna there's some other random stuff on HBO, like on HBO Max, like the Max programming. You're gonna see that kind of shed away because Paramount's already doing some of that. I think, but the HBO part of HBO Max is absolutely
Right.
going to be preserved. That's a really valuable brand that has a lot of cachet with consumers, and I don't know whether when they merge them, it's going to be called Paramount Plus. It's going to be called HBO Plus. Who knows what it's going to be?
Oh no, I hope
But
not.
I have no idea what they're going to call it, how they're going to do it. But within that streaming bundle, whatever it is, HBO will absolutely remain a distinct brand because that brand is one of the most powerful brands in entertainment, and you would be a fool to squander it.
Yeah, yeah, I hope so. Because I mean, the HBO of Euphoria and White Lotus and Rooster, and I mean, I don't know if you've seen Rooster. I'm a big fan. I think.
I actually the reviews were not that great, so I haven't watched it. Is it good?
Oh yeah, I think. You know what? I think it's a really good HBO vibe show. Like
Okay.
it really feels authentic and it really feels true to like the to HBO self. And also, it's the quirkier comedy that's kind of been more in. I like this new phase of quirky TV, whether you want to call it Pluribus or Severance or White
Mm-hmm.
Lotus, or I think like this kind of falls into not having a particular genre, and so you don't really know quite how to consume it except to just trust the brand and understand
Yeah, sure.
that you know the makers and like they're going to
Mm-hmm.
do a good job with it.
Yeah, I mean, there's no TV brand, let's call them, that takes more creative risks than HBO. So if you like creativity, you have to have it.
Yeah, definitely. I also I hope that the Penguin continues because I was a huge fan of the Penguin.
I like the Penguin too, but there's no that was like a mini series,
Oh,
unfortunately.
really? You don't think
Yeah.
there's no more plans for
No,
it?
I've heard them say, there's no plans to do another season, unfortunately. I mean, that story was self-contained. I also think like, getting a movie star like Colin Farrell to do
Yeah,
multiple seasons may be a challenge. But what it did show, and you will see more of, is that you can take random characters from the DC universe, like villains or supporting
sure.
characters, and if you put like high class writers and actors and directors around them, you can make like a really good show out of it. It doesn't like not every show just has to be like Wonder Woman, Superman, Batman. You can
Yeah.
take lots of other characters. So I think you will see other character like actually the Green Lantern show coming this summer. I think it's called Lanterns. Is an
Hmm.
HBO show. Like
Right.
which means it's like HBO quality, even though it's from DC. So I think you definitely will see more HBO DC shows going forward, like the Penguin.
Yeah, and what's cool and what's cool and I hope it remains consistent is that, like you said with DC, that they don't mind having different genres.
Yeah,
HBO is almost its own genre. Like this felt like a
totally,
mafia HBO show that
hundred
kind of
percent.
had with DC adjacent, but
Yeah,
that's
100%.
awesome.
And even though it was Colin Farrell who was in the last Batman movie, like you did not have to see that Batman movie to fully enjoy
No,
the put
no,
Penguin
no.
show,
In fact,
right?
I didn't even put them together, and I saw the previous Batman movie. I
Yeah,
didn't
there
put
you
them
go.
together until you just mentioned that to me right now.
Hmm.
Um, wow. Okay, this covered a lot of fun information, Ben.
Yeah.
I really appreciate your time. One last thing. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Last
It's
question.
okay. Last question.
Is Netflix buying Ben Affleck's
Ben
AI
Affleck's.
company?
Yeah.
Um, Not a big deal.
Hmm.
PR move, or indication of what the future is going to be like. What do you think? Or all three, maybe.
It's actually, I would say, not much of a PR move. Like I've talked to them about it, and it's like it's. I think it was a savvy move. Like Affleck has actually developed some AI tech that does something useful, and the idea, like what this company basically does, is it's it it's an AI model that is trained on the material from your movie. So say you've shot a movie, you put everything you've done into that movie,
Hmm.
on that movie into the AI system, like every frame you've shot, all the scripts, etc. And then what often happens in a movie is you're like, shoot, there was like one angle on this scene that we should have gotten and we didn't, right?
Right.
Like and getting all the actors together, getting back on location is really expensive. This AI is really good at just helping you to reconstruct like one shot or one line of dialogue, which is kind of a problem often for movies and TV shows. They either it costs millions of dollars to reshoot stuff, or they can't do it, and then there's like a flaw in the movie where you're like, why do they not have this shot that they need, or why is this scene seem to be missing? And it's because it either they forgot to do it or it didn't come out the well they expected for some reason. So it lets them just kind of do a little bit of like reshooting or touching up in post production for a lot less money. So that's why they bought it. I think it makes a lot of sense. It's kind of a shame that Netflix now controls it and nobody else will be able to use it. That's maybe the
Yeah,
only
but
downside.
I would you don't think that's similar to search engines or chatbots that other variations of this idea are gonna just start popping up and trying to sell themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. Other people will do it, but it's just obviously Netflix is now in the lead, right? They bought
Yeah.
what to my knowledge is the first successful.
Ryan Reynolds might be the next next one to try to
Yeah,
sell
yeah,
another business move or
yeah,
something
sure. I'm
like
sure. Yeah, after his alcohol brands, they didn't make
that. That's
any of
right.
that anymore. Yeah.
Anyway, Ben, thank you so much for the time. If you don't mind hanging on, I just want to ask you a quick question after you finish. But thank you so much, and
Okay.
this is really such a pleasure.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
Okay,
Good to talk to
thank
you.
you.